And I'm Ben.
And we are Married with Dragons.
Great to actually have you back this time. You're feeling a
Yes.
bit better this week.
I've been a little unwell for the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's gone through the house, unfortunately, so it hasn't been too much fun. But we're back and we're good. We're feeling fine and we're ready to talk about all things D&D.
We got some, if you're watching over on Twitch, we've got some coordinated outfits.
Yeah, I would like to make a point of noting that no, PlayStation have not sponsored tonight's episode. We are just big advocates of PlayStation. Apparently, they can't quite see you.
Oh, yeah, it's there. So with tonight's show, we're going to talk a little bit about some D&D news that has happened recently.
Yeah.
Go through a bit of a funny story that we had in a very earlier campaign.
A bit of a chaotic story, certain as well.
And then we're going to talk about some I was about to say D&D things, but of course it's D&D things, but some DM things.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions pop through that I thought would be good to touch base on. We're sort of going to continue our series of creating characters with you guys, going over, the character building process for different classes. We touched on Wizard last episode. This episode, I thought we touched on a few questions for people who are some budding DMs out there had a few queries about how to run particular parts of the game. So it'd be interesting for sort of people who are DMs or aspiring DMs, as well as players as well, so you can get a bit of a better insight into how the game's run, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So to start off, some D&D news.
I don't know, you are very excited about.
Yes. So for anyone that knows me knows I'm a giant Jeff Goldblum fan. He is my bread and butter. I live and breathe the Goldblum. And
hey, hold on. Question: you're under oath. I'm your husband.
Yes.
Who do you love more?
Oh, I'll have to say you by default. But Jeff's up there.
Yeah. Look, it's more than I expected. I thought you'd just straight up say Jeff, to be honest.
No. Anyway. We do actually have Jeff in the room with us tonight. He's behind us. You can't see him, but
he's lying on the ground.
He's lying on the ground. He's usually in this propped up behind Ben.
We really should preface that with saying we don't actually have him captured. It's a cardboard cutout. We haven't actually kidnapped Jeff.
If we did have him on the show, I'm pretty sure it'd be very hyped up now, and I would not be coping. But so Jeff Goldblum, he has joined the D&D community by joining Dark Dice in the next season with their campaign. So Dark Dice is a D&D podcast where they run through, I'm not actually 100% sure what...
So it's campaign-based.
But I'm not sure what that campaign is.
It's a very sort of dark, gritty campaign setting. They've already released season 1.
Yeah.
I believe there was 18 episodes in that season, and they've now started releasing season 2, in which Jeff has been introduced as a player. So
season 2 only has 2 episodes at the moment. It did start last week.
Yeah, only a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, so they're dropping them weekly. So the last episode that came out was, I think it was yesterday. So he has featured in that episode. So he starts off. And his character, Balma, which I'm pretty sure is how you pronounce it. I'm not sure what type of character he is. It might be an elf.
You have to watch the show to find out. Check out a bit of Dark Dice.
I feel as though Jeff would definitely be a spellcaster. I can see him as a wizard.
But it's certainly a very different kind of streamed campaign, the Dark Dice. It's very, some campaigns out there can be quite comical. This is a bit more of a gritty, they focus a lot on their atmospheric sounds and stuff like that. And it's quite a different, interesting podcast. So definitely check out
I think it has different production values with voice acting in there as well. And like you said, the sound effects and... all of that, so it's really definitely cool. A podcast to check out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Along with ours,
of course. It goes without saying.
But so I was very excited once I heard that news, and I'll be definitely tuning in. I think I'm gonna have to catch up on season 1 though. 18 episodes, probably. Smash them out, so I can get ready for Jeff.
Keep up to date in season 2.
Yes. So that is the D&D news we have for today. And I think it's time to kick off a little bit of a story.
Yes, we have a bit of a funky story tonight. You did forget to mention at the start, the favourite part, everyone's favourite part of every episode of Married with Dragons, we also have the joke at the end as well.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that's the highlight. That's what everyone sticks around for, is my fantastic joke. I'm just humour. So stick around for that as well at the end. But yeah, so the story, I haven't actually told you exactly which story I'm going to tell, but you've got an idea. You were involved in this. You were a player. This story is from my very first campaign as a DM, very early on in the experience as well. And it was a bit of a learning curve for me keeping up with the chaos that is D&D sometimes, and a bit of a learning curve for, figuring out when to let players roll for things and when to tell players, look, that's probably not possible. So a long story short, basically the players were in a jungle in Schult, which is basically like they're in a jungle setting, very tropical, and they decided to try and light a fire via using a spell. I had them roll for it, and I think it was actually a nat 1 that it rolled. It was very, very low. And so I described that it hit a tree, and one thing led to another, and things kept going wrong for the party, and all of a sudden, eventually, the jungle was on fire. Everything around them was burning, and it was quite hectic. And can you remember what happened next?
Well, everything was burning, and somehow we attracted the likely guest of a troll.
Yeah, I honestly don't know why. In my head, I thought, all right, this is already a hectic and chaotic situation. I have no idea why my DM brain thought, let's add a big enemy to the situation. I don't know why, but I did. And I described as like the party had made
just
some noise.
So
this was some extra spice. They attracted this troll, and the troll ran out of the trees, and of course, because the jungle was on fire, he was on fire. So there's this scene of this flaming troll running out of the trees. Actually, no, it was a giant, I believe. It might have been a giant. It could have been an ogre. Anyways, this big bad boy. And it comes running out of the trees, and the party's like, what the hell do we do? The jungle's on fire, there's a troll coming at us. What's our next step? And you're barbarian you were playing at the time, decided to try and do an interpretive dance.
Because I couldn't communicate to it.
You couldn't.
And I thought, interpretive dance, that's one way of communication. If I can't speak the troll, ogre, giant, whatever it was, language.
Universal language, the old interpretive dance.
Yeah.
To try and express the stop, drop, and roll technique.
Yeah. So
I had your roll performance. Again, there's a lot of rolls going on in this session for some reason, for everything they were doing. Inexperienced DM. And so you did your roll for stop, drop, and roll. I believe you actually did convince the brute to stop, drop, and roll. And he had rolled up in like a tarp or one of the players' tents or something. He'd rolled up, and then one of the other players decided to try and yeet him out of the tent he had rolled up in, to basically try and get him away.
And I'm pretty sure he rolled a nat 20.
Yeah, he did. I remember that clearly. He rolled a nat 20, and so I've described this now smoking troll being yeeted through the air, flinging down a hill, rolling through the jungle. The jungle's still burning at this point. The roll's rolling through. And the party, I don't know why he decided to do this, but the party ended up running after the troll, running downhill, because you wanted to catch up to him, but for some reason, I think we were trying to still be his friend or something.
Or we needed information or something.
Yeah, I don't think it was very calculated. There was not many calculated decisions at this point. Anyway, eventually run down, you realise you actually can speak his language. At this point, after finally looking at your character sheet and thinking, oh, hang on, I can speak that language. Tried to talk to him, failed miserably in the communication attempts. Eventually had to fight him and kill him. All while the jungle's still burning around, I'm like trying to keep track of my, behind my little DM screen. Right, how much of the jungle is actually destroyed by this point? Like, how much of the scape have you just wrecked? Eventually, they defeat the troll, and they're looking at each other and are trying to figure out, right, this fire has gotten out of control. What do we do to put it out? And as a DM, I'm thinking like, there's not much that's going to go on here. And what did you, as a group, come up with?
Well, the most logical answer is do a rain dance. We needed water.
I'm sorry. Just take a second. Did you just refer to the most logical answer to a jungle fire being completing a rain dance?
Yes. I think you should at least try something before escaping. And there's no time to look for water and get little buckets of pail for a whole entire jungle.
Yeah,
you need the high heavens support, and you need that rain.
Yeah, look, that sums up, honestly, D&D pretty well, to be totally honest. So the players decided, and not just one, they all started rolling and trying to participate in doing this rain dance to put the rain out. And I swear to God, there was at least one natural 20. I think there was 2 with modifiers ended up being over 20.
Yeah.
Like there was the rolls were fantastic.
Rolls.
And in my head, I'm thinking, look, I'll let them roll for it, but I don't see them really doing it. And of course, they rolled amazingly high. And so I'm sitting there thinking, well, I've got to let it happen. So they did their rain dance, and the clouds formed, and it started raining, and it put out the fire that was in the jungle.
We saved the day.
That's one way of describing that. And I can just remember after that session, just thinking, how the hell do any dungeon masters actually prepare sessions like that? Not in a million years could I have predicted what happened in that session. It was, and like I said, early DMing, I think that I let things probably get a little bit too out of control and a little bit too, out there, considering what probably likely would have happened. But, it led to a funny, interesting story, to say the least. Certainly, I think if I was to do it again, I probably wouldn't have skill checks for every little thing. I probably wouldn't have, even a nat 1, probably wouldn't have it light the entire jungle on fire.
Yeah.
Not
going so extreme.
You live and learn as a DM.
Yeah.
I was very, very early on. First ever came, I think this was like session 4.
Yeah.
Session 3 or session 4. Very early on. But yeah, I can just remember that was the session where everything seemed to snowball.
Yeah.
And it just got more and more insane. And it started off with them trying to light a fire to cook some dinner. And it ended with a flaming troll and a rain dance. And my God, if that doesn't sum up D&D, I don't know what does. That, that pretty much sums up any group. Whenever you try and do something, stuff gets out of control.
And that's it. That's D&D for you.
Yeah. But, as I said, makes a good story. Fun times, fun recollections.
All right.
But yeah, that's our story for this week. I think it sort of fit in a little bit with the theme of, some DM tips and learning as you DM, learning as you go a little bit.
Yeah, so we did have a couple of questions from some D&D community members. So for the first one, when DMing, how often do you fudge dice rolls to keep the narrative you built versus how often do you let the dice decide? Okay.
I'm going to flip this question a little bit to start off with, and because you've been a player in all of my campaigns, how often do you think I change? So, by the way, if anyone who's not, around the D&D community very much, fudging dice rolls basically means changing the outcome of a dice roll to fit. So, for example, if they roll really bad, but you tell them they succeed in the plays, tell them they succeed, or you tell them they fail, you change the outcome of what actually should have happened based on the dice roll. How often do you think I fudge dice rolls?
I think it depends on the circumstances. I feel as though you stay true to the dice majority of the time. But if you think that, the party is working really well together, role-playing really well together, and we're just, dream teaming it at the moment with whatever situation we're at, I feel as though if there was a point where it could ruin it, you may fudge it here and there, or you might keep whatever the dice, if there was a certain effect to happen from a very low number, you might twist it so it's not as bad, or it relates to something different so we can keep going as the team we are.
That's a pretty good answer for a player, to be honest. Pretty good insight there.
Yeah, I take notice.
All right. I'm not going to give you inspiration right now. Look, you're pretty close. You were certainly on the money when you started, when the first thing you said was it depends on the situation. It certainly is very, very situational dependent and situational based. I suppose I'll preface by saying 90% of the time I will let the dice roll, and whatever the dice roll is, that's the outcome. Maybe even more, but vast majority of the time I'll leave the dice rolls as is, and I'm not going to change them. That's part of the game. And if I end up changing dice rolls all the time, I'm taking away the core game mechanic, and I'm taking away the player's agency. So I certainly don't do it very often. The only times I will do it is if say a particular dice roll is going to have a really negative impact on the player's fun in the game. So if it's going to, really be detrimental to everyone's enjoyment, sort of a little bit similar to what you said. I mean, just because the party's role-playing and gelling really well doesn't mean their playing can't go wrong. So not necessarily quite that broad, and certainly not. I'm certainly not going to protect a character from dying. Like if you guys get into that situation, that's part of the risk and reward. If you die, you die. So I'm not going to change those roles. It's more for if there was a situation. Sometimes it'll happen, and you sort of learn this a little bit as a dungeon master as well. Sometimes you realise I probably shouldn't have made the players roll for that. Say if the players are trying to jump across a small gap, and for some reason you make them roll an athletics check or something. If I make the decision to get you guys to roll something, and think, oh, actually, you know what, I shouldn't have made you roll that. Rather than saying that out loud, I might just have you guys succeed that, because that's on me as a dungeon master. I shouldn't, make you guys roll for trivial stuff, and that's something that you learn as you go. Certainly the majority of the time I will let the dice determine the outcome. The big thing I try to keep in mind is if it's something that was forced, something that was forced on the players that, they had to roll for something that was unforeseen, and it's going to have a really negative impact on the story or a really negative impact on the players' experience in the game, then I might change roll a little bit. But even then, I'm very apprehensive to do so, because like I said, if you change roles too much, you take away the core mechanic of the game. The one I suppose what is it? You break the rule. What am I trying to think of? You know what I mean? Like the one time I don't follow that rule.
Yeah.
you know
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean.
Kind of break the rules.
Yeah. The one time I don't sort of follow that rule, it's not all the time, but yeah, in combat, if I have accidentally thrown an encounter that it's no fault to the party, they haven't done the wrong thing by running into this encounter. If I've just thrown an encounter at the party that is way too difficult, then I might fudge rolls a little bit, because that's not your fault that you're in a fight way too difficult. If I've just accidentally not balanced the encounter properly, all right, I might fudge a few rolls to make sure that you don't all get just totally killed, because that's again my mistake. I think it sums it up pretty well as well. Anytime I make a mistake as a DM, that's probably more likely I'm going to fudge a roll, because that's my fault, not your fault.
Yeah.
Whereas if you guys get unlucky or make a bad decision, that's up to the dice. Yeah. So. Again, I think that's something that, for the person who asked that question, I think that's something that you pick up as you go on.
Yeah.
That, you get a bit of experience as you do.
Because I feel as though you'd want to see your party succeed, and you want to see them do well, and if they are working together and they're doing well, and they're role-playing, and everything is just happy days, you just kind of don't want to then ruin that by...
Look, true, you don't, but I think that the potential for failure is what makes the game exciting.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Just because the party's role-playing really well together and gelling really well and making great plans, they should still be able to fail. Because if they can't fail, then there's no excitement, there's no thrill in the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, that's the core mechanic of D&D, is letting the dice decide the fate sometimes.
Yes. That is true.
To your bitterness and sweetness sometimes, I think.
Sometimes, when the DM is rolling bad numbers, it's better for the players.
But like when the DM's rolling really good numbers and the players don't like it, I'm not fudging those rolls either.
No,
if it's a balanced encounter but the monsters are just getting really lucky and rolling high, I'm not going to fudge those, because that's again part of the chance. That's a fair combat, and they're just getting lucky. It's only if I've made the mistake of accidentally throwing in, extra couple of enemies I shouldn't. That's when it'll be a little bit different. But certainly don't advocate to do it all the time. It's at the DM's discretion. It's something that they can do. Yeah. But if you do it as a DM, certainly don't make it very known to the players either, because the players certainly don't like feeling like...
Well, an authentic experience, not knowing that you're not exactly railroading, but twisting... stats.
The big thing as a player is you want to succeed or fail based on your decisions and based on the dice rolls that you make.
Yeah.
You don't want to succeed or fail because the DM's holding your hand through the story.
Exactly. Okay.
Hopefully that answers that question. I went on a little bit of a tangent, but...
Yeah, I think that answers it very well. All right, so the next one. So from a new DM who has no idea how to properly use the challenge rating system, how do you use this to balance encounters?
Right.
Sorry if I messed up that question.
This is quite an interesting question to answer. So for anyone who doesn't know, as a player, you don't really need to know it too much, but for it's still interesting. And for anyone who's DMing, challenge rating is basically what they use to determine the difficulty for an encounter. And it goes off, so each monster, each enemy has a challenge rating, starts at 1/8 and works its way up from there. And the difficulty, like the challenge rating system, you can do it manually via the book, the Dungeon Master's guide, or you can there's challenge rating calculators you can use on the internet, which makes it really quick and easy as well. Basically, what it does is it looks at the amount of enemies, it looks at the challenge rating for those enemies, then it looks at the amount of players, the level of those players, and it works out whether the combat is going to be trivial, easy, medium, hard, deadly. And sort of tries to give you a bit of an idea about how difficult the fight will be for the party. The problem with this is it's not super accurate all the time.
Yeah.
Because D&D parties can be made up of so many different player styles and characters. They're all so different. So, you'll have times when a deadly encounter is an absolute walk in the park, and something you thought was meant to be trivial, it actually turns out to be a lot harder than you anticipate. It's happened to me before a few times where, the scale has certainly tipped.
Would you have to, with the challenge ratings, when setting challenge ratings, you have to keep in character leveling up?
Yeah. So the player's character level goes into the math of it as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Because basically the way it works, if you use it like the online calculator, you don't have to worry about it, but the way it works is there's like a total amount of experience certain levels, party levels and party sizes have per day, which makes encounters deadly or trivial and whatnot. The challenge rating system can be really helpful at lower levels, when you've got lower level parties, because generally they're a lot more similar across the board, I guess you could say. There's less variation. Obviously, as you level up, there's more and more character variation, there's more and more different play styles, and it gets a little bit harder to sort of calculate using the challenge rating system. What I would do, what I would suggest for people who are starting out as a Dungeon Master, and even just starting out with a new group, use the challenge rating system to determine an encounter's difficulty, especially at lower levels. But use it to figure out what it thinks the difficulty for that encounter will be. And then when you run it, note what you thought the difficulty of the encounter was. And you can sort of use it as a reference point. So for example, if you use the challenge rating system and it says that an encounter is going to be hard, and you run the encounter and the party absolutely wipe the floor with it. Okay, alright, next time you use the challenge rating system, we'll do it a couple of times, don't just use it as a one-stop, but next time maybe think, okay, maybe I need to pump up the difficulty a little bit because my party seems to be doing really well in combat. So pump it up a little bit and then sort of see how hard it was. And sort of, you've got to gauge it yourself as you go along as a Dungeon Master, gauge how your party's coping with combat.
Yeah.
Yeah, because every party's different. Everyone's very different, and so there's not really one set, way to determine how difficult an encounter may be without getting used to how your party works.
Do you take into account, so I know I mentioned before about character levels, but how about, so you have a party, say you have a party and they're all low level, like wizards, but there's one that is a real tanky fighter or something like that. Do you take each player's stats kind of in consideration?
See, that right there is why the challenge rating system can be very flawed sometimes.
Yeah.
Because the challenge rating system takes into account number of players and the level of those players.
But not the actual
It doesn't take
stats
into
and
account
ACs
classes or anything like that. So that's why the challenge rating system can be thrown out of whack a little bit at times. And that's why it's important to get used to how your party goes in combat and their power level, I guess you could say, or how they work together to overcome challenges in combat, and then start to either increase or decrease the difficulty of your encounters based around their strength and how they progress through fights, because I guarantee every single party of players is very, very different, and they're going to do different things and different strategies in combat. So it's certainly something to keep in mind. For example, if you've got a party with very, one or no ranged users, whether it be spell or weapon or whatever, on the challenge rating system, if you pull, a heap of kobolds with bows or like ranger enemies that deal, damage over distances, even though that's not rated very difficult in the challenge rating system, because of the makeup of your party, that might be really, really difficult because they've got to cover distances and just that particular combat might be quite difficult. So you get used to how your party runs and how your party runs combat, and I think that you can certainly use the challenge rating system as a bit of a baseline when you're first starting out, but when you run a few sessions as a dungeon master, you'll get used to it. You'll certainly get a feel for the combats that your party completely mows through very easily, and the combats that you think, okay, wow, so this was a bit more of a challenge for them, and you can sort of learn from those experiences as well.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a bit of a strange topic, that the challenge rating, because some people love it, some people hate it.
As a player, you don't really know much about it.
No.
Yeah.
No. But I suppose that's what a DM is sort of considering when creating encounters. Because as a DM, I think, right, how difficult do I want this encounter to be? Am I expecting this to be a walk in the park, pretty easy encounter? Am I expecting this to be really challenging for the party? And I think the higher end is the more difficult ones to balance. Because you can very easily go a little bit too dangerous and all of a sudden kill a couple people, and it's like, I've made that a little bit too tough. And that's when, like I said, if you've messed up and made the encounter a bit too tough, maybe that's when you might fudge a roll or two in combat. Yeah. Because again, that's on the DM for messing that up. Not that we mess up very much.
Yeah, no, of course not.
So hope that has answered that question. What do you think? Do you think it's time for the highlight of the stream?
The jokes? Bring it.
Bring it.
Do you just have the one? Or
I do
two?
Just have the one today.
Oh, good.
Easing back into it after being sick. Got to, just soothe back into the jokes.
Yeah.
All right, it's a good one though. It's a good one. I laughed quite hard at this one. I'm laughing already. What do you call a magician who is also an incredible cook?
Gordon Ramsay.
Is Gordon Ramsay a magician?
He is when he cooks.
Okay, that is not the punchline of the joke, but I love your thought process. No, it is not Gordon Ramsay. What do you call a magician who is a fantastic cook? I'll tell you. A sorcerer.
Oh. That was
excellent. Superb. Fantastic. A sorcerer. That's great. That's great.
It's very punny.
As most of the jokes are that I tell on this show.
Very good. I enjoyed that.
I enjoyed telling it. But on that very high note, I think we will call it there for tonight's episode.
Yeah. And now that, hopefully this, the dreaded cold season is over. Well, it's been a few months.
Past for us,
hopefully. Past for us with sickness. And we can be back in full swing next week and all the weeks to come. Yeah,
I'm thinking obviously we're still sort of going to pepper in our character creation episodes as well. So we might tackle another class next week. Do you have a class in mind that you thought? I did tackle wizards by myself on last episode.
So we've done barbarian and we've done wizards. So let's go another non-spellcaster. A rogue. A rogue.
That's fan favourite by a lot of people. Might touch on rogue a little bit next week. Stay tuned. Stick around for that one. We certainly do enjoy covering the class creations. It gives me millions of ideas for new characters that I'll probably never get to use. But it's still fun creating characters anyway.
That's right. So we are on every single Thursday, same time, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. I was about to say daylight savings.
No. Yeah, so AAST.
Yeah, it's like not AUDT. No. So AAST, and we'll be back next Thursday at 8 p.m. for another session of Married with Dragons.
Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in.
Make sure to tune in next week as well.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye guys. Bye.